The terminal buzzed with the usual chaos of travelers, crying babies, overhead announcements, and the rolling thrum of suitcase wheels on tile, but no one noticed the quiet storm brewing at security checkpoint B until it exploded. A woman, mid-30s, African-American, dressed in a faded grey hoodie and jeans, stood patiently in line, clutching a battered old suitcase. Her name was Tasha Green, a school counselor heading home after a long conference. She looked exhausted, ordinary, invisible. Until she wasn't. "Ma'am, step aside," barked a white TSA officer with a buzz cut and mirrored sunglasses. His name tag read H. Callahan. He didn't ask, he commanded. Tasha blinked, startled. "Is something wrong?" "You fit the profile," Callahan snapped. "Possible drug carrier. I'm conducting a full body search." Before she could respond, his hands were on her. Not professionally, not lawfully, but invasively. Tasha recoiled, shocked. "Get your hands off me." In a flash, her shirt tore, gasps rippled through the terminal. Phones rose, eyes watched, but did nothing. "You assaulted me in front of everyone," Tasha shouted, her voice trembling with rage. "My husband will have your job. He'll have you arrested." Callahan didn't flinch, he smirked. "A filthy girl like you should be thankful I even touched you." The whispers turned cruel. "She probably stole that suitcase. Her husband's probably some gangbanger." Typical. But Tasha stood tall. "You think you know who I am? You don't, but you're about to find out." She pulled down her phone with steady hands. A call, a whisper, and then silence. Minutes later, the crowd parted. A tall black man in a midnight blue suit walked through security like he owned the place. Because he did. Jeremiah Green, director of the airport, and Tasha's husband, stepped up with fire in his eyes. In that moment, the narrative flipped. But just as justice seemed imminent, a twist shattered everything. Drugs were suddenly found in Tasha's luggage, and now the very people who had stood frozen in silence turned into a storm of accusations, hate, and betrayal. What unfolded next would ignite a national scandal, topple careers, ruin reputations, and force a reckoning no one saw coming. Because behind every profile is a story you never bothered to hear. Tasha stood frozen as the officers surrounded her, their latex-gloved hands moving swiftly impersonal. Her suitcase, ripped open, clothes tossed aside, revealed a hidden pouch of white powder sealed in clear plastic. "That's not mine," she cried out, her voice cracking. "I've never even seen that before." Jeremiah's brows furrowed. "This is absurd. She passed through 2 security screenings in D.C. with no issue. She's my wife. You're planting—" "Sir," interrupted a stern female officer, stepping in front of him. "We'll need you to step back. There's protocol." "Protocol?" he snapped. "Where was protocol when your agent laid hands on my wife and tore her shirt in public?" No one answered. The crowd that had moments ago watched in horror was now buzzing with doubt. A middle-aged man with a golf cap muttered, "Should have known. It's always the quiet ones." The young woman clutched her purse tighter, whispering to her boyfriend, "She was trying to act innocent, but look at her now." Jeremiah turned toward them. "Do you hear yourselves? You think a woman's skin color predicts criminal behavior?" And then, like clockwork, the cameras came. 3 local reporters had rushed into the terminal, phones recording, microphones raised, feeding the frenzy. "Airport director's wife caught smuggling drugs. Details at 6, one shouted. In the swirl of chaos, no one noticed the young janitor mopping nearby. Earbuds in, eyes locked on Callahan. No one saw him mouth the words, "I saw him do it." Tasha was handcuffed, her head hung low, not in guilt, but in disbelief. Jeremiah reached for her, but an officer stepped between them. "Sir, interfering with an arrest is a chargeable offense." "This is my airport," he bellowed, his voice echoing through the terminal rafters. "And that's my wife." Suddenly, a familiar voice chimed in over the intercom. Calm, clear, cutting. "This is Deputy Director Elena Kane speaking from Central Control. As of this moment, Director Jeremiah Green is suspended pending an internal investigation." Tasha's knees buckled. Jeremiah's blood ran cold. Eleanor, his second-in-command, the very person he had mentored, vouched for, promoted, was turning on him. On cue, she stepped onto the scene, flanked by 2 board members and a security consultant with a clipboard. "Jeremiah," she said, smoothly, not even looking at Tasha, "it's best you come with us for the integrity of the airport." "The setup," he whispered. "You're setting us up." Elena leaned closer so only he could hear. Her tone shifted. You were never supposed to be here. You were a placeholder, a headline, now your time's up. Then she smiled at the cameras. As she was escorted away, Jeremy, now just another face in the crowd, was shoved into an unmarked black SUV, and still the janitor watched. But later that evening, inside a dingy airport break room, he took out his phone. He replayed the video he'd secretly recorded. Officer Callahan reaching into Tasha's bag during the chaos, slipping in a packet, clear as day. He hesitated. He was only 18, a high school dropout, no power, no protection, but he knew injustice when he saw it. And he had grown up watching his own mother get pulled over randomly every other week, watching his uncle lose a job because someone felt uncomfortable, and his cousin arrested for a crime he didn't commit. Maybe this was his chance to stop the cycle. He clicked upload. The video went viral. Within hours, social media exploded. Justice for Tasha, corruption in plain sight, celebrities retweeted it, activists showed up at the airport, protesters marched outside TSA headquarters. Back in the airport holding cell, Tasha sat silently, hands cuffed, heart shattered. The room buzzed as phones started ringing. A guard glanced down at his screen, then looked up at her, eyes wide. Manja, you need to see this. The door burst open. Jeremiah, now released, held a printout of the video in his hand. They got everything, he said, tears in his eyes. You're going home. But it wasn't just about her freedom anymore. It was about something deeper, something rotten festering beneath the surface, too long ignored. Because this wasn't just one incident. It was a pattern. It was a system. And Tasha, no longer a victim but a witness to the rot, knew this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. Tasha didn't sleep that night. She sat on the floor of her living room, still wearing the wrinkled clothes from the airport. Jeremiah paced behind her, phone glued to his ear, juggling calls from lawyers, reporters, and airport board members now panicking over the scandal. But Tasha heard none of it. Her mind was stuck on one image, the security officer's smirk as he touched her, as if her body were public property, as if she didn't matter, as if she didn't exist. I want to press charges, she finally said, her voice low but resolute. Jeremiah stopped pacing. We will. We'll go after Callahan, the TSA, the entire chain of command. You're not alone in this, Tasha. She looked up, and for the first time he saw something different in her eyes. Not just pain, but steel. No, she said. I don't want just justice for me. I want to know how many others he's done this to. How many women were silenced before I showed up with the wrong skin and the wrong suitcase. The next morning, Tasha held a press conference outside the courthouse, flanked by civil rights attorneys and her husband. Dozens of microphones were pointed at her, but she looked past them, to the women in the crowd, the quiet ones, the invisible ones. This isn't just my story, she said, her voice steady. It's the story of every woman who's been violated, profiled, and dismissed. But we won't be silent anymore. The crowd erupted in applause. The reporters fired off questions. But one voice cut through the noise. "Them's green," a woman in the back shouted. She pushed through the throng, tears in her eyes. "He did it to me too, Officer Callahan, 2 years ago. I filed a complaint. It vanished." Another woman stepped forward. "I thought I was crazy. He said I fit the profile. He touched me in front of my kids." A third, a fourth, a fifth. Tasha's breath caught in her chest. Her worst fears were true. She wasn't the first. She was just the one who got seen. And then came the second shock. Jeremiah's phone buzzed. He stepped away, answered, then froze. When he returned, his face had gone pale. "What happened?" Tasha asked. "They found Callahan," he said slowly. "Dead. Shot in the chest. In his apartment. Execution style." Gasps rippled through the crowd as the news broke live across every major network. The officer accused of misconduct was now a murder victim. Just like that, the narrative flipped again. Reporters swarmed Tasha, accusing questions flying like bullets. "Were you involved? Do you know who did it? Did your supporters go too far?" The police opened a formal investigation. The FBI joined. Online, Tasha's name began to trend, this time with hashtags like vigilante wife and revenge killer. Overnight, she was no longer the victim. She was the suspect. 3 days later, in the dead of night, a brick crashed through their living room window, spray painted on the garage door with the words, "We know you did it." Jeremiah moved them into a hotel under assumed names. They were offered private security, but Tasha refused. "I'm not hiding," she said, "not when I finally have the world's attention." But something else had shifted, deep in her gut. Someone was orchestrating this. It felt too precise, too fast. The evidence that had cleared her, the viral video, the timing of Callahan's death. Someone wanted to burn down everything they had, piece by piece. Then the third shock. Her lawyer received a letter, anonymous, no return address. Inside was a flash drive. Tasha sat at the dining table as the screen flickered to life. Grainy surveillance footage played. A woman in a suit, Deputy Director Elena Kane, meeting a shadowy figure in a parking garage. Money changed hands, then a manila envelope, then a gun. The figure matched Callahan's height. It was dated 1 day before his death. Tasha's hands trembled. She wasn't just fighting systemic racism now. She was chasing a deeper rot. Someone in power had tried to silence the women who spoke up. Someone in power had killed Callahan, not to protect him, but to erase him. Eleanor Kane wasn't just a traitor to Jeremiah. She was the architect of a cover-up, a murderess with a badge and a title. And Tasha, she was the loose thread. Now they were coming for her next. But Tasha stood up, calm and ready. "We're going to court," she said. "Not just for justice. This time, for the truth." And this time she was prepared to burn down the entire system, if that's what it took to rebuild it. But not everyone was ready to help her build. Jeremiah sat in the hotel suite's corner, hunched over his laptop. His suit jacket was wrinkled. His eyes were bloodshot. The news was on mute, but the headlines screamed loud enough. Wife of airport director cleared, now targets TSA brass. Corruption or conspiracy, Elena Kane denies all allegations. Tasha paced by the window, rehearsing her speech for the press briefing, but every time she looked at her husband, she saw distance. Not just physical, but something deeper, a weight he hadn't spoken of yet. Finally, she broke the silence. "You haven't said a word since the footage dropped. What's going on?" He didn't look up. "You're becoming a symbol. The kind people rally behind, the kind people turn into lightning rods. That's what truth does." He closed the laptop slowly. "Are you sure this is just about the truth, Tashi?" The question stung. "What's that supposed to mean?" Jeremiah sighed, rubbing his temple. "You want to bring down Elena, I get that, but now you're dragging the entire administration through the mud, including me. That flash drive, where did it really come from? Who gave it to you?" "You think I'm lying?" she asked, stunned. "You think I planted evidence?" "I think," he said carefully, "you've made enemies, and I think some of them want me to fall harder than Elena." Tasha stepped back, heart pounding. "So now you don't trust me either?" "It's not about trust," he whispered. "It's about survival." She stared at him in disbelief. "You're afraid of what happens if we expose her. But Jeremiah, the system already turned on us. There's no going back." But Jeremiah had seen what power does. He'd watched boardrooms go cold the moment he walked in. He'd been invited into opportunities that were never real. He'd been elevated, yes, but never fully accepted. He was never more than a token in a suit. And now, because of Tasha's crusade, he saw it unraveling. His phone vibrated. It glanced down and froze. An anonymous message. "Drop the case, or we release the tape of you and Kane." Jeremiah's pulse spiked. He shut off the screen immediately, but Tasha had already seen the change in his face. "What tape?" she asked, her voice sharp. He hesitated. Tasha's expression darkened. "Jeremiah, what? Tape?" There was no point in hiding it now. "Last year, during the audit, Elena offered to help clean up the mess. We met, off-site, once, maybe twice. There were drinks." Her breath caught. "Are you saying you slept with her?" "I didn't know what I was doing. I thought I was protecting the airport, protecting us." Tasha turned away, arms folded tight. Her hands trembled, not from rage, but betrayal. "And you were so quick to question my integrity," she whispered. "All this time, you were hiding your own." Jeremiah stepped forward, desperate. "Tasha, listen, that video, it's bait. Elena's using it to destroy us both. But if we stay united..." "United," she spat. "You broke that." "Nada." Silence fell between them like a wall. Until a knock at the door. 3 sharp raps, followed by 2 soft ones. Tasha's eyes darted to the peephole, a teenage boy in a hooded sweatshirt. She opened the door cautiously. He handed her a package, no return address. This came to my house by mistake. It said urgent. I saw your name, I figured it mattered. She thanked him, closed the door, opened the envelope. Inside, a hard drive. Jeremiah looked confused. Another video? Tasha plugged it into her laptop. A series of files loaded. Then her eyes widened. It wasn't Eleanor. It's Jeremiah in his office, weeks ago, talking to the same man seen exchanging envelopes with Elena in the garage. All Jeb played. If Kane gets out of hand, we'll expose her, but I need a backup plan. My wife can take the fall. She's already in the spotlight. Tasha's mouth went dry, and Jeremiah stepped back, stunned. That's not real. That's edited. I never said that. Tasha turned to him slowly, voice shaking. So tell me, Jeremiah, how many times have I been the backup plan? He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came. She stared at the man she had once trusted more than life itself. And for the first time, since the airport, since the strip search, since the smears, she felt truly alone. But not broken, because now she knew exactly what she was up against, and who she had to take down next. Even if that meant starting with her own husband. Tasha didn't flinch as Jeremiah packed his things. He didn't argue, he didn't explain, he just zipped his duffel bag and walked out the hotel room door, leaving only the echo of betrayal behind him. She sat still for a moment, the silence thundering, her chest burned, not with heartbreak anymore, but clarity. In that moment, she shed the last layer of fear that had kept her quiet for too long. No more protecting people who'd profit from her pain. No more pretending the system would fix itself. And certainly no more waiting for someone else to save her. Because now she knew the puppet master behind it all was Cameron Kane. Within days, Tasha filed a federal civil rights lawsuit against the airport administration, naming Cameron as the central conspirator in a racially motivated abuse of power, evidence tampering, and obstruction of justice. The media exploded. Cameron responded with a televised statement, calm, confident, rehearsed. The allegations against me are baseless. I have always upheld integrity and fairness. I will not be bullied by emotional manipulation or racial theatrics. Tasha's jaw clenched as she watched the smug smirk beneath Cameron's pearl earrings. Then came a call from a blocked number. A man's voice rasped, low and quick. Meet me, 9:00 p.m., level 4 of the East Parking Garage. Come alone. I have something you want to see. Now she hesitated, then went. The parking garage was empty, dimly lit. Her footsteps echoed as she stepped onto level 4, heart thumping like a drumbeat. A figure emerged from the shadows. Middle-aged, grey hoodie, unshaven. You were the only one who looked the cameras in the eye, he said. The only one didn't look away. Who are you? Tasha asked. Name's Reggie. I work security maintenance. I quit when Kane promoted her goons. But I made copies of the surveillance footage before I left. He handed her a thumb drive. You won't believe what's on it. And then he disappeared into the night. Tasha watched the footage in a hotel room, her hands shaking. There, plain as day, Cameron in a conference room, shaking hands with known drug traffickers. But that wasn't the most shocking part. Behind her, Jeremiah, leaning against the wall, not protesting, not resisting, just watching. But then came a twist even Tasha couldn't predict. In another clip, hidden, time-stamped, months before the scandal, Cameron sat alone on a phone call. The audio, barely audible, revealed her true plan. Train her, she's too clean, too quiet. People trust her, but once we plant the drugs, once she's arrested, we pivot. Blame Jeremiah for negligence? His wife's the perfect fall, black woman, educated, unknowingly married into a drug ring. Once public trust breaks, I'll have the board in my hands. The airport becomes ours, and our route to South America stays invisible. Fill it up. Tasha dropped the laptop. It was never about her. It wasn't even about Jeremiah. It was about power and money. Cameron was building a smuggling empire under the guise of national security, using race as her shield and scapegoat. Fantastic. He was just a pawn they didn't expect to fight back. The courtroom was packed. On one side, Cameron, still polished, still smiling, and the other, Tasha, holding a folder of truth in her hands. Your Honor, her lawyer began, we have new video and audio evidence proving that Deputy Director Kane orchestrated a racially targeted plot to frame Ms. Green, manipulate airport protocols, and build an illicit trafficking network. The judge leaned forward. You may proceed. As the footage played, gasps filled the room. Murmurs turned to outrage. Cameron's face finally cracked. She stood, pointing at Tasha. She's lying. She doctored the video. Another shock. From the back of the courtroom, Odin, Cameron's former assistant, stood up. She's not lying, he said. I helped cover it up, but I saved everything. He stepped forward and dropped another folder on the judge's bench. I was scared, he added, but I'm more scared of living in a country where this kind of evil hides in broad daylight. Cameron's screams echoed as marshals cuffed her. She kicked, cursed, sobbed, but it was over. The judge struck the gavel. This court finds the defendants guilty of conspiracy, obstruction of justice, and multiple counts of civil rights violations. She closed her eyes. Not in relief, but in quiet, measured determination. Weeks later, she stood at a press podium outside the now reformed airport. The sign behind her read, Tasha Green Terminal, Justice Through Accountability. We didn't just expose a criminal, she told the crowd. We exposed the illusion of safety, an illusion that only existed for some. We proved that when power is unchecked, it doesn't just break rules, it breaks people. She scanned the crowd. Black mothers, airport workers, activists, pilots, children. And we're done being broke. Applause thundered, cameras flashed. And as she stepped down, a young black girl ran up to her and hugged her tightly. You're my hero, the girl whispered. Tasha nodded. No, sweetheart, you're the reason I fought. As the little girl smiled up at her, Tasha felt something shift, not just in her, but in the air around her. The crowd had seen justice, the media had told the story, but the battle wasn't over. Behind the scenes, the machine that nearly destroyed her was still rumbling. And it was Odin who knew just how deep the gears went. 2 weeks later, Odin sat in a private room at the Department of Justice, his fingers trembling over a keyboard. He had been granted whistleblower status and protection, but that didn't make him feel safe. He'd worked under Cameron for 4 years. In that time, he'd seen files disappear, audits vanish, and accidents happen to staff who asked too many questions. But until now, he had stayed silent, complicit. Not anymore. He hit enter, and a folder full of classified internal emails, surveillance tapes, encrypted contracts, and foreign transaction records uploaded to the DOJ's secure server. It was enough evidence to implicate over a dozen executives, not just at the airport, but at 3 other U.S. transportation hubs, 2 federal contractors, and even 1 senator's office. Cameron was just the face. The body of the beast was much bigger. The next morning, Odin was walking to his car when he noticed the window had been smashed. Inside, his laptop was gone. He froze. His heart pounded. This wasn't random. He was being watched. And he called his handler, who immediately transferred him to a safe house. But Odin knew something the government didn't. There was one more piece of evidence, something he hadn't uploaded yet. Something dangerous. Back at the hotel, Tasha receives a burner phone and a message. Meet me at 11 p.m., park rooftop. Don't bring anyone. Trust no one. He hesitated, then nodded. She knew the source. Odin. The rooftop was windswept and dimly lit. Odin stood near the edge, hoodie up, eyes darting nervously. He looked exhausted, pale, haunted. I don't have much time, he said. They're inside the Justice Department. Someone's leaking information to the people we just exposed. Tasha stepped closer. What do you mean? He reached into his coat and pulled out a flash drive. This is everything. Names, bank accounts, travel logs, encrypted voice calls. It proves this wasn't just about airport control. This was a nationwide trafficking and money laundering operation. And every piece was protected under the illusion of Homeland Security. But why didn't you submit it already, she asked. Because it names 2 federal judges, Odin whispered, and your husband. Tasha's breath caught. Jeremiah? Odin nodded. Not just complicit. He was recruited years ago, long before you were ever targeted. They used you, Tasha. Your arrest wasn't just a miscalculation. It was bait. They wanted you to go public so they could monitor the fallout. See who turned, who resisted. You were the test. Tasha stepped back, her chest tightened. Everything she had survived, everything she had fought for, was part of someone else's calculation. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she forced them back. Not here, not now. What do you want me to do with it? She asked. Release it, Odin said, but not through the courts, not the government. Give it to the people, journalists, activists, the ones who can't be silenced. And what about you? Odin hesitated. They already know I broke the chain. I won't make it out. No, Tasha said firmly. I'm not losing another ally to this system. She pulled out her phone. I have someone I can call. The next 48 hours exploded across the internet. A massive independent data leak, nicknamed Operation Black Signal, went viral. News outlets scrambled to verify the evidence, but the public had already made up its mind. Thousands of airport workers staged walkouts, protesters flooded federal courthouses, community leaders demanded congressional hearings, civil rights organizations filed new lawsuits overnight. And Odin, he vanished. No one knew where he went. Some said he was taken, others believed he escaped. A few whispered that he had never existed at all. But Tasha knew the truth. He had sacrificed his name, his safety, and possibly his life to pull the thread that unraveled the entire cloak. Weeks later, Tasha stood in front of the US Capitol, addressing a sea of people. Courage isn't comfortable, she said. It's not polished or safe. It's messy, it's dangerous, and sometimes it means losing everything. But if we don't have the courage to speak up, to blow the whistle, to expose the truth, then we give power to those who never deserved it. The crowd roared in agreement. She paused, looking skyward for a moment. For the ones we lost, she added, and for the ones who stepped forward when it mattered. And she raised a fist. The message was clear. This wasn't the end of a story. It was the beginning of a movement. But every movement needs something more than outrage. It needs redemption. And redemption, Tasha knew, only came through truth and something even rarer, accountability. 2 months after Operation Black Signal exploded across the country, a new hearing was scheduled, this time not for defense, but for restoration. Inside a federal courtroom packed with journalists, activists, and families who had once been silenced, Tasha Green sat in the front row beside several black passengers who had also been wrongfully arrested or harassed during Cameron's reign. One by one, their cases were formally dismissed, apologies issued, files cleared. Then came something no one expected. The Department of Justice, under new leadership, announced a full compensation fund, not just for those framed, but for every black-owned business raided, every traveler flagged, every life interrupted by the toxic policies Cameron had helped institutionalize. Tears welled in Tasha's eyes as one of the victims, an elderly pastor who'd lost his church to legal fees after being falsely accused, stood up and whispered, "Thank you. You fought for all of us." He couldn't speak. She only reached for his hand and nodded. The final surprise came at the end of the session. Before we adjourned, the judge said, "There is one more matter." Whispers rippled. Tasha looked around, confused, until a door to the left of the chamber opened. A man stepped in, unshaven, thinner, eyes tired but unmistakably alive. Though the courtroom gasped, phones came out, someone dropped their pen. He walked up to the podium, shoulders squared, and looked straight at Tasha. "I left," he said, voice low but steady, "not because I was running, but because I had to be sure the truth could stand on its own, without me, and it did, because of you." Then he turned to the judge and added, "I'm ready to testify. I have more." Gasps again. The truth, it seemed, had even deeper roots still to be uncovered. But for now, something else mattered more. The crowd stood, one by one, a standing ovation, not for a victory in court, but for something harder to win, a return of faith. Later that day, Tasha stood outside on the courthouse steps, surrounded by the very people who had once doubted her. She raised her voice once more, not to demand justice, but to call for unity. None of this fixes the pain, but it gives us the power to heal. And with that, we rebuild. And behind her, Odin smiled. Justice wasn't just served, and it was witnessed. And in that moment, the story came full circle, not with punishment, but with peace. But peace isn't passive. It doesn't mean forgetting the pain or pretending the scars don't exist. Peace means power reclaimed by those once voiceless, by those once shamed, by those who were told to stay quiet and move on. Alsha stood before the cameras one last time, not as a victim, not as a headline, but as a woman who had survived a system meant to erase her. She had lost her privacy, her trust, and almost her freedom, but she had never lost her voice. And today, she used it not for revenge, but for something far more radical. Close. To everyone watching, she said, her voice strong, I want to be clear. This story was never just about me. It was never just about a wrongful search or one corrupt official. It was about what happens when silence becomes routine, when people in power abuse it, when the rest of us let it happen. The crowd quieted. Some wept. To the women who are still afraid to speak up, I see you. To the men who feel invisible in boardrooms built to ignore them, I hear you. And to the children growing up wondering if the world will ever treat them fairly, I fight for you. He paused, then looked directly into the camera. And I ask you, what will you do with your voice? Will you use it to lift others, to speak truth, even when it shakes the ground beneath you? Hirschfeld. This movement wasn't built by politicians or millionaires. It was built by janitors with footage, by mothers who refused to back down, by strangers who chose courage over comfort. She glanced at Odin in the crowd. Alive! Finally at peace. And to those who stood with us when it wasn't safe, thank you. You reminded the world that justice doesn't belong to the powerful, it belongs to the people brave enough to demand it. She smiled, one last time. If this story moved you, don't let it end here. Share it, talk about it, question everything, and remember, no one is too small to change something big. The audience erupted, not just in applause, but in resolve. Because in the end, the real victory wasn't just in the courtroom, it was in the hearts of everyone who realized truth doesn't need permission, justice doesn't need an invitation. Enjoy it. It begins when you choose to care. Thank you for watching. If this story stirred something in you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Let's keep the conversation going. Let's keep the truth alive. And above all, never stop fighting for the world we all deserve.